Oh,
God.
all right. Took a film course, and I remember there were so many, like Bergman and all of those crazy, wonderful.
All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. This is our East Point movie discussion, and we're going to be doing The Seventh Seal. I'm Ed Katz, full-time marketing and PR person, but part-time film critic. Okay, so everybody is signed in, and also I want to let you know the next time we're going to meet will be November 30th, and that will be the last time of the year. It's not the fourth Thursday, which is the usual, because it would be Thanksgiving, and we're not doing it on Thanksgiving. So it'd be the week after, and you will get to vote on that one. So I will send out something in the next week or so. Thank you. And you'll be able to vote for what you want. I'll make a diverse array of pictures, so you can pick something completely different or something in a similar vein, depending. Okay, so
We want the same type.
Another Bergman film.
yeah, well, that was, and I thought about it because
Or
Because I-
Fellini. How about Fellini?
I did one already. He's my favorite. But I was thinking actually this for Wild Strawberries, but given it was so close to Halloween, I went with this one. And actually though, if you remember in the movie, Wild Strawberries were mentioned in the movie.
Yeah.
Which was his next movie, which was kind of interesting. So,
Page to advertise.
yeah, right, right. He was promoting it ahead of time. Little product placement. Okay, so The Seventh Seal, show of hands. Who thought the movie was well done and effective? Let's go with that first.
Well done and effective.
Okay. So-so? Some so-so? Okay, totally did not think it was well done.
Oh, that's
Well, that's what I'm asking. That's what I'm asking first. First.
Good movie, but.
All right. Oh, David's on.
Answer.
Okay.
Got
Got
more
someone
people
else
than
coming
I
in?
expected. I didn't think anybody would show.
Okay. All right, so,
They screwed up your count, you better call police.
well, he's on Zoom. He's on Zoom. All right, so, now, who liked the movie? Show of hands, who liked the movie? Couple in the back, okay. You, some, who were mixed on it? Mixed, you mixed, and who hated it? More hated it, wow, okay. All right, so it's like, it's like about 45–50% hated it.
Why don't you just understand the movie?
Well, we'll discuss that, we'll discuss that.
That's why I keep making it.
Good, good, that's the point, that's why we have a discussion. Exactly. All right, welcome back, guys. Hi, and please sign in. All right, so, did it move you? Did it affect you at all?
No.
It made me sleep.
I couldn't even.
Sleep before you go to sleep.
Okay, all right, Duffy, can you address
Well,
that?
it was very somber.
But a little louder, make sure.
Yes, it was very somber and, I don't know about nihilistic, I mean, just
Mm.
that none of us can escape death, and he was bargaining with death.
Yep.
But, you knew, that death was going to win out for everyone all the time.
There was a guy who yelled that at everybody in the middle of the movie, in
Yes.
case you didn't get it in the
Yes.
first place, right?
Right, right. So it was dark, of course, it was, medieval times, I think about 14th century.
Yes,
Yeah, so coming home and having to deal with the plague after,
after 10 years of the crusade, right?
I mean, that's incredible.
Right.
Everyone was so scared of dying, which makes so much sense,
Except the Joker,
except the joke.
except the Joker.
And we can get into that in a minute too, actually. All right, let's see. Thoughts on the ending? Well, we'll get into that a little later. I don't want to cover that yet. Okay, so the movie is considered a classic and one of the best international films of all time on many, many lists. Has a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, and even from audiences, a 93%. So it's very highly regarded. And on IMDb, which is very tough to get even a 7.0 out of 10 or higher, it has an 8.1.
Did that get it? The 15th or did it get it now?
That's a great question. The reviews and the comments are over many, many years, so it's a mix. On the audience thing for Rotten Tomatoes, it's a lot more recent ones, but the critics are more in the past 15 years, because I guess when it came out on DVD around 2000, 2003, whatever, critics' reviews started surfacing then. Obviously, the internet was pretty big then, so they're there. But I actually have some reviews. One from when it first came out that I printed out and I'm going to read. I've also found a psychiatrist who went through Bergman and what's in the movie and how it relates to Bergman and his life. And then there was also Roger Ebert, a renowned critic, who gave it a 4-star out of 4, and he talks about why. So there's a lot we've got here. I'll first start with the Rotten Tomatoes critics consensus. Basically, one sentence. Narratively bold and visually striking, The Seventh Seal brought Ingmar Bergman to the world stage and remains every bit as compelling today. So obviously that's not from the 50s when it first came out.
So was it one of his early?
It was kind of in the second 1/3 of his career.
Oh, the second.
The
Okay.
first part of the second 1/3, if that makes sense, like a third of the way through his career. But this was kind of the movie that put him on the map. And then Wild Strawberries came out the same year, and then after that it was international sensation. So he had a bunch of things he did earlier that were not well seen, and you can't even find them on streaming. I tried looking for some that Ebert mentioned in his review. They're not available. I mean, you may have to go to like a archive library in New York to find them or something. So at the moment, you can't really find them. But the production budget was $150,000. You know, an international movie, it's kind of probably a pretty normal budget. 35-day shooting schedule and $150,000 in 1958. You know, it's not a lot, but it's not a little. The box office, it did okay. It did 311,000 worldwide. All but 2 scenes were shot in and around Filmstaden Studios in Solna, Sweden. He hadn't yet ventured outside of Sweden to make movies, which he did shortly after Wild Strawberries, but not at this point. He wrote the movie. It was released in America, October 13th, 1958. So 65 years ago this month. So it's older than me. An hour 36. No, I'm just saying, it's like just before me. So the title, all right, the title, it's from Revelation 8. And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Now, I had to look up the meaning. I wasn't sure about it. And I think Bergman's okay with if you have to look it up to get it. His religious allegory about a knight who faces death and tries to outwit him. The religious symbolism reflects Bergman's internal struggle with his Lutheran minister father and his own questions about faith. That was written in 2019, just a little perspective. I've got a lot on Bergman's background. He's widely considered one of the greatest, most influential screenwriters and directors of all time. Son of a nurse and a Lutheran minister who was later a chaplain. His family has nobility in it. He's a descendant of the noble Brahms, Ehrenskölds, and Stockenstrom clergy families of Finnish, German, and Swedish origin. His father also descended from German noble families. So, you know, he didn't come from a poor family, but apparently his father especially was very cruel to him and locked him up in the closet. And he said, with things that would eat your toes. That was his quote in an interview years later.
What? Was what?
With things that would eat your toes. Locked in the closet.
Things that would curl your
Rats, lights.
So that was his punishment. So I'm sure that affected some of his filmmaking. Well, yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. His films have been described as profoundly personal meditations into the myriad struggles facing the psyche and the soul. Some of his, and that's a quote, some of his most acclaimed works include this, Wild Strawberries, Persona, which came out in the mid-60s, Fanny and Alexander in the early 80s. Those 4 films were included in the 2012 edition of Sight and Sound's Greatest Films of All Time. He was ranked number 8 on the magazine's 2002 Greatest Directors of All Time list. He made more than 60 movies and documentaries, most of which he also wrote. He also had a theatrical career that included periods as leading director of Sweden's Royal Dramatic Theatre, and he directed more than 170 plays. So he made 60 movies and directed 170 plays. The guy worked a lot. He's very busy, right? His company of actors included obviously Max von Sydow, Gunnar Bjornstrand, who was the squire, B.B. Anderson, who was the young mother, who went on to do a lot of things, Erland Josephson in later years, Harriet Anderson, Ingrid Thulin.
Leave Omen? Leave Omen, wasn't she?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, a couple of movies, right? The Scenes from Marriage,
Did
right?
he
Scenes from
marry
Marriage.
D.B. Anderson? I remember something.
Well, yeah, so that's kind of interesting because I was trying to find, he was married 5 times.
Okay.
And we had this other director, well, producer was married 7 times, Robert Evans, if you remember, and several other directors were married several times. So I don't know what it is about directors, but they get married a lot.
They have a power.
He's going to swim
A lot of
about.
power.
Yeah.
Directed
They
home.
get divorced a lot.
So,
I remember
right, the
I-
first 4 marriages ended in divorce, while the last ended with when his wife Ingrid died of stomach cancer in 1995 at age 65. Aside from his marriages, he had romantic relationships with actresses Harriet Anderson, B.B. Anderson, and Liv Ullmann. Okay. Max von Sydow stated in an interview that he had many discussions with Bergman about religion, which seemed to indicate Bergman believed in an afterlife.
Any children?
Yeah, he did have a few. In fact, one of his children directed a movie that he wrote when he was older that was pretty highly acclaimed. His son. 2004 interview for Swedish TV, he said he would get depressed by his own films. Quote, jittery and ready to cry and miserable. Unquote. In the same interview, he also stated, if there is one thing I miss about working with films, it is working with Sven. And that's his cinematographer, Sven Nykvist, one of the greatest cinematographers of all time, who actually did not work on this movie. He started with him later. But the guy who did this was great. I hope I wrote his name down here. I did not. Yeah, I thought I did, but I didn't. But I thought the images were incredibly striking. Starting out, I mean, the very first scene of the movie is the sky, and then the big black bird, right? And then you see him on the beach with a chess set, right? It looks like he just washed up on shore and he's got a chess set. So that was a little unusual. Not necessarily a realistic film.
All the images of him were incredible. Right? They really were.
Yeah, and von Sydow has a very, especially young man, had a very striking face. So, and then the knight's costume he had for the Crusades, yeah. So awards and nominations, he won the Best Director at Cannes, not for this movie, but for Brink of Life, which I wasn't familiar with. He won the Golden Bear for Wild Strawberries at the Berlin International Festival. He was the first foreign language filmmaker to be featured on the cover of Time since Leni Riefenstahl in 1936. And that was in 1960. He received the Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award at the Oscars in '71. He won 3 Best Foreign Film Awards, and in 1997, the Palm of the Palms, and the 50th anniversary of the Cannes Film Festival. And he's been nominated and won many other awards. Entertainment Weekly in '96 ranked him the number 8 director in its 50 greatest directors. Kubrick admired his work, and his work was a point of reference and inspiration for Woody Allen, who described Bergman as probably the greatest film artist, all things considered, since the invention of the motion picture camera. How about that? Max von Sydow. Movie Web listed the best Max von Sydow films with The Seventh Seal, number 1. Number 2 was The Exorcist, which I thought was kind of interesting. 3 Days of the Condor, Virgin Spring, which was also a Bergman movie. Minority Report was Spielberg directed with Tom Cruise. And then there were a few others too, but I thought that was pretty cool. He's been in so many movies. Okay.
It's like a blank canvas that you could paint many different ways. That's how I think of Max.
Max von Sydow.
Like a blank canvas, like white. And you could paint him all different ways depending on the role he's playing.
He was supposed to be in The Sound of Music, and he turned it down. And it went to Christopher Plummer, and he always regretted turning it down. I didn't know he could sing, but there wasn't a lot of singing for that part, but that was kind of interesting. Anyway, it says here, he can thank Bergman's overactive imagination for the Seventh Seal. Bergman developed the idea daydreaming while staring blankly at a church window instead of paying attention to the sermon. This historical drama is his way of exploring existential themes through the prism of a supposedly simpler medieval life. Okay, that's there. All right. Okay, I've got a few things I want to get into, but I want to also go into your comments because I've got some discussion questions. So let me get some, because I asked ChatGPT for ChatGPT's thoughts on discussion. So, all right. Yeah, it's artificial intelligence.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it says here, this is from ChatGPT. The Seventh Seal is renowned for its exploration of existential themes, particularly the search for meaning in the face of death. Discuss the film's portrayal of existential crisis, faith, and the human condition, and how do the characters grapple with these themes? Light discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone have any initial thoughts, or you want to ruminate on that a little bit?
That's why I was so attracted to the Joker, as I call him. I don't know what his title was. The Joker and Bibi. I mean, the two of them. Life was going on.
Yes.
Life
Wow.
was wonderful.
So the translations of their names,
Yeah.
he was Joss, he was called Joss, and she was called Mia,
Yeah.
which is Joseph and Mary.
Oh.
And they had a little son.
Oh. Yeah. Oh, the baby. I thought it was a guy.
It looked like a girl.
No, but it was, but they don't show it.
Well, because it had this, the dress on.
It had nothing on.
Yeah.
So,
The thing that struck me about, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say that it was in the 50s and, after World War II. And it was so disgusting and devastating, World War II. So the aftermath of that, I guess that's the aftermath of the plague or during the plague. But I think it really is reminiscent of where we are right now.
that's another part of the reason I thought to pick this movie, because of the plague aspect.
3 days and people talking apocalypse and
Right.
preparers and preppers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somber.
Right.
I think it speaks about the fear of death and who isn't afraid of death, and the use of religion to make you feel better about death, and
Except by that yelling guy.
it was a little risque at the time to question religion,
Right.
and he probably got backlash for that because he said at one point, religion is made up to make us feel better and not be as afraid of dying. So that was like, wow, but it talked to, I think what I got from it was the search for the meaning of life. And also, what is the meaning of life? Why are we living? What purpose are we doing? And what I got out of it from that happy family was to enjoy life is the meaning of life, try not to live your life in fear and just to enjoy, live in the moment and love and family and friends and
then they joined them.
and
They
then
come together.
they joined him and then they separated again. Right.
It was interesting, the
Right.
fact
Water is the purification.
that he survives
The
the
Crusades.
Crusades, and he comes home to be afraid of death. It's just, okay,
I didn't get the impression he was afraid of death.
but it was.
He just
interesting.
wanted to find the meaning
But-
of life, or
The meaning
that
of
there
life.
was a God,
He
and
went
do
to the-
something
he went to
redemptive.
the
Right.
Crusades to do something good, and yet he came back with this feeling of not having done anything.
Right, and I think his squire was the one who said it was a waste of 10 years. right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and so he finally did something good.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
What did he do good?
Yeah, I did it.
So that was the ending.
Very-
What he did good was he stalled,
Diverted.
he diverted death's
Yes,
attention
yes,
so they could escape.
Oh, you're right.
So they didn't get killed.
Oh, you're
they
right.
were
Right,
able
I didn't
to
realize
escape.
That was his
Oh,
redemptive act.
yeah.
That's why he actually, I think, for the first time in the movie, smiled right at the end.
So I would like to, at this
He
point,
fooled death.
relate
I
that
didn't realize.
to the
He
movie
fooled
about the
death,
guy who
so
has
they
his
don't
young
escape.
son in the Holocaust in
And
the
he said,
camps.
go,
And he is
go.
also
go.
diverting his son from the impending.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can you repeat? I didn't hear.
There was a movie
Yes.
whose name,
that
don't-
was Roberto Benigni, right?
Yes.
Life is Beautiful.
Like-
Life is Beautiful.
Yeah.
so the
Right.
father is doing that same thing with the Joker,
Right.
diverting the attention of the child from them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's sort of the same
He
thing.
reminded me, it's funny you said that, because he reminded me of the actor that was the father in Life is Beautiful.
You know, I wonder
I
if
said,
that
"Is
was,
it the same person?"
no, that's a good
No,
point. He did look like him.
He did.
And there was
Yeah.
actually similarities to the character, so
Good
there could have been
looking.
some inspiration
Good looking, very
for Life
good.
is Beautiful from this movie. This movie inspired a lot of people and a lot of music too.
It did remind, I looked at him and said to.
Good point.
Is that the same actor that was in Life is Beautiful? And no, it couldn't be.
No, that was like
A long
40,
time.
40 years
Right.
later, yeah.
Right.
And just a little advice, since we're talking about the subject. Should you ever encounter the angel of death? My suggestion is you eat a lot of garlic on a regular basis. When he shows up at the door, you say, hello, how can I help you? And then you'll be all right.
Go somewhere
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that may work better for vampires. I
I
don't-
don't think that's it.
Um,
He had anything to do with Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, and you had the actors playing the role.
he directed a lot of Shakespearean productions.
And I had a
So,
feeling of
yes.
Shakespeare
Yep.
in there.
Right, the other thing I wanted to mention, and I couldn't find anything to correlate this directly, but my impression was, I'm watching this and the two, the knight and the squire are walking and walking, plodding along, and I'm thinking, this reminds me of Waiting for Godot.
Well, the pacing was so
Yes,
deliberate and, but I found myself mesmerized by the pace. It's like, okay, this is so slow and you gotta really work at it, but then I found that I was leaning in more, just like, okay. I don't think I was expecting more in terms of action or anything like that, but the characters just kind of are intriguing.
Yeah.
In a very slow, methodical way.
Right, so what I was able to find regarding Waiting for Godot was Godot came out in the early 50s. So it was about 5 years before this movie came out, before he made it. So I tried finding out if there were productions in Sweden, and yes, there were, but it couldn't give me specific dates. But before I got specific dates in England and France, and I think Norway or Finland, before this movie came out. So he might have definitely heard about it. He could have read about it. It was, widely acclaimed, the production of Waiting for Godot. So it could have been some inspiration, but there was no direct correlation. But when I asked the computer about the two of them, Samuel Beckett, who wrote Godot, and Bergman, they said they're both existentialists.
Yeah.
So there were similar thought patterns expressed in their work. So, if it wasn't a direct inspiration, they were at least of a similar mind in how they conceptualized films and theater. Did I lose anyone, or is everyone with me, or any questions?
I have a.
Sure, Joel.
A totally different take on this, as a visually oriented person. And being involved in the arts. I thought the cinematography was exceptional. It was really beautiful, that you could have taken freeze frames and turned them into paintings or great photographs.
Yeah, the coloring came out, it should be black and white, and it's green for some reason, but, I mean, what an iconic image, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
so I'll bring it up there so you guys can see it real quick.
Well, we were talking a little bit before about how the segues between scenes, it faded, but you saw a shadow of the previous. That had to be revolutionary for 1957.
The fade, no, they had the fades, yeah, the fades were, I mean, I even, Fellini did them in the, mid-50s, yeah, right around that time, I guess, it was right around that time.
I thought that was really cool. Because and it started that way. Like
Yeah.
in the first one or two scenes, it just, you just saw the old image and then I just thought that was, to your point.
Yeah, and people kind of like, they're on the beach or whatever, and they kind of fade out,
Yeah.
into something else, yeah. Yes,
I remember now, the aspect of the plot itself, the link that I did not get was he survived the Crusades for 10 years. He came back all in one piece, able-bodied, could ride his horse, and suddenly he's afraid of death. Suddenly death
That's what he
is going to come to him and swoop him. I mean, other than the Black Plague itself, I guess he came home to a village where everybody had the plague. Other than that, I couldn't see a connection. Did you?
I think maybe he was worried about death for other people. Maybe at this point, he had gone through that period, so he was, and didn't have fear for himself, but for humanity.
I think that's a great
You know
point,
what, I think
because I didn't get the
that-
perception he was afraid of it,
That
as much as he was so
but for-
tired, he wasn't really
yeah,
willing
but
to
for
resist too much.
humanity, For others, so he wanted to save who we could.
Right,
Yeah.
I think.
I think that was also, again, he's trying to look for meaning in life, he couldn't find any proof of God's existence, he asked the supposed witch, who obviously really wasn't a witch, but she
Right.
just had some issues, mental health issues or something. And then he tried confessing to the priest, who wasn't a priest,
Right.
it was death masquerading as a priest. So, here everywhere he's turning to try to quickly get some answers while he has time left, which he knows he doesn't have much time, and he's not getting anything. So I think he wanted to perform one redemptive act
To help others.
to make himself feel better about his life having some meaning
Yeah.
and doing something really that was good, because the Crusades were a total mess, disaster. So being able to save the family when he met them,
Humanity.
that was the only other time in the movie he was happy.
Yes.
And there's a quote when he's drinking the milk, the strawberries, he says, "I will remember this." This, he said that. And I
He
think
didn't have a family. He didn't have. a-
well, let's talk
Yeah.
about that, because he had a wife.
His wife was there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wasn't that weird when he comes back to see her after not for 10 years, and the
They
reaction?
were still alive even.
I thought she was dead. And she
He
was.
didn't know.
He didn't go back to
He
find out.
didn't know.
I
He
thought
didn't
the
know.
wife was dead in the.
I had a feeling. he didn't.
That's an interesting thought. I did not see anything to state that,
No.
but the fact was, I mean, it was pretty clear that this guy is deaf, and she says, "I welcome you into my house."
Yes.
Yeah.
So, that
And
was
she
kind
was
of,
so young, for him to have been gone 10 years, she still looked like a very young woman.
Oh.
right.
They were young when they married.
Got married at 12.
Yeah.
That's possible back then, yeah,
When
especially.
it first came out, did it have universal appeal? I was young then, and I couldn't think of my
Right.
parents truthfully going to see that movie.
Right.
Yeah,
So when this came out, did it only go to like art theaters or special theaters? Did it
I
go
don't know the
to-
theaters it went to, but I know I can give you some of the reviews.
Did you see it go to a regular
No,
theater?
they always went to the art movie theater.
That was the art theater.
All right, so here's a review from 1958, November 1958. And interestingly, the critic was Jonas Mekas. Does anyone recognize that name?
No.
All right, he was the first full-time film critic of the Village Voice,
Okay.
a Lithuanian Jewish-born filmmaker, a Holocaust survivor. He's been called the godfather of avant-garde cinema. He made films called Lost, 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 and Walden, and a documentary, more recently, on Martin Scorsese's making of The Departed. He was a poet and a friend of Jackie Kennedy, Andy Warhol, and the Velvet Underground. So he was a fascinating guy. So his review, this is when the movie first came out, and Bergman was, especially in America and even England, relatively unknown. The Seventh Seal, which is coming to our art theaters soon, is just the opposite kind of adventure. He was talking about a Douglas Fairbanks movie before. Ingmar Bergman, maker of this film, is a young Swedish writer who has already a dozen films to his credit, although few of them have been shown abroad. Those who have seen more of his work consider him one of the 2 or 3 most intelligent film directors. His is the mental adventure. However, in The Seventh Seal, as in The Naked Night and Smiles of a Summer Night, and no, I don't know those movies, he is not too anxious to arrive at any definite conclusions. His strength is, as Virginia Woolf would say, to find adventure in the journey itself. Obsessed with the ideas of love, life, death, good, and evil, he meditates as he goes, talking in symbols, in parables and images that often are of breathtaking beauty. There is more cinema in The Seventh Seal than in the entire Hollywood production of 1958, with the exception of Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. Also a great black and white movie. It is being said, and I did see that one, it is being said that Bergman is bringing Paris intellectuals back to the movies. Eisenstein was the last one to have that on. So very high praise for a relative unknown director at that point. Now, I do want to give you some quotes on what Roger Ebert said, because he had, as usual, a very good take on it. He doesn't, I don't think he always nails it, but he usually nails it. And by the way, there's a document, no, not a document, it's a book that just recently came out on Siskel and Ebert and how the two hated each other, but how that made the show great, which I was a kid, young teenager, if that, and I would watch their show every week. Them argue about movies and dig personal insults to each other. And Siskel resented Ebert because Ebert was the first film critic to win a Pulitzer Prize. So anyway, so Ebert wrote in 2000, he died, I think, in 2003, but no, maybe later. But anyway, he wrote in 2000, 4 stars out of 4. A knight returning from the Crusades finds a church still open in the midst of the Black Death and goes to confession there. Speaking to a hooded figure half seen through an iron grill, he pours out his heart. Quote, "My indifference has shut me out. I live in a world of ghosts, a prisoner of dreams. I want God to put out his hand, show his face, speak to me. I cry out to him in the dark, but there is no one there." The hooded figure turns and is revealed as Death, who has been following the knight on his homeward journey. Images like that have no place in the modern cinema, which is committed to facile psychology and realistic behavior. In many ways, Bergman's The Seventh Seal has more in common with silent film than with the modern films that follow it, including his own. Perhaps that is why it's out of fashion at the moment, again in 2000. Long considered one of the masterpieces of cinema, it's now a little embarrassing to some viewers with its stark imagery and its uncompromising subject, which is no less than the absence of God. But, he said, the directness of The Seventh Seal is its strength. This is an uncompromising film regarding good and evil with the same simplicity and faith as its hero. All of Bergman's mature films, except the comedies, are about his discontent with the ways that God has chosen to reveal himself. But when he made The Seventh Seal, he was bold enough to approach his subject in a literal manner, to actually show the knight playing chess with death, an image so perfect it has survived countless parodies. And he had the confidence to end his film not with a statement or a climax, but with an image. Quote, "The strict Lord Death bids them dance, says the young actor, directing the attention to his wife to the horizon against which Death leads his latest victims in a macabre parade." And if you remember the people that you saw on the parade, it was Death plus 6 others, so there's your 7, which, the title, and the angels. Seeing The Seventh Seal again after many years, I was reminded of the richness of detail about Europe in the early Middle Ages, when plague swept the land and the Crusaders returned. The knight, his squire, a realistic down-to-earth man who has a lively dislike of women and a sardonic relationship with his master. He has a silent little snarl to show his discontent. As the two of them travel home to the knight's castle, the knight is challenged by Death. And it says to him, "I have been at your side for a long time." He offers Death a bargain. They will play chess for the knight's soul, and the game continues during the film. Okay, he talks about the young girl, Maud Hansen, who was the devil, or the witch. As she's being prepared for burning, the squire says, "Look into her eyes. She sees nothing but emptiness." And he says, "It can't be." We are left almost until the end with the possibility that although death exists as a supernatural figure, there is no longer structure in which God plays a part. Then he goes back to Bergman a little. Some filmmakers are born, Bergman was made, self-made. Born in 1918, he was the son of a Lutheran minister whose strict upbringing included the punishment recalled in the films of the small boy being locked in a cupboard with things that will eat your toes. He was not at ease in the world of small, realistic gestures and everyday behavior, and only when he drew back into more serious issues did he begin to find his genius. The Seventh Seal and Wild Strawberries both released in Europe. In 1957, Mark is coming of age as an artist. Both are about men near the end of their lives on a journey in search of meaning. His spiritual quest is at the center of the films he made in the middle of his career, and the Seventh Seal opens that period in which he asked again and again why God seemed absent from the world. Then he says, Bergman's work has an art. The dissatisfied young man considers social and political issues. In middle age, he asks enormous questions about God and existence. In old age, he turns to his memories for what answers there are. And in many of these films, there is the same kind of scene of reconciliation. In the Seventh Seal, facing the end of his own life and the general destruction of the plague, the knight spends some time with Joseph and Mary and their child and says, I will remember this hour, the dusk, the bowl of wild strawberries, the bowl of milk, Joseph with his son. Saving his family from death becomes his last gesture of affirmation. So there you go. There was a mixed review in 2005. Some writer gave it 2.5 out of 4. I tried to find negative reviews. There's really only one, and it wasn't that negative. This guy says it manages some powerful images, but it feels a bit too calculated to get under the skin. Okay. I don't think that's a totally unfair criticism. And then the negative one was from the Sunday Times in the UK. The magnificent craftsmanship, of course, I admit, but beneath the surface of the high-class bony morality, which has understandably attracted so much admiration, there lurks what to me is a dreadful squashy sentimentality. I thought he was too sentimental.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, there were a few other reviews I wanted to quote, just little quotes on, but I gotta find. I made little notes on the corner so I can find it easier, but it's still not there. Maybe there. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Okay, Sean Axmaker on Stream on Demand in 2023. So this was actually October 2023. Arguably the most famous of Bergman's films and certainly his most iconic. The Seventh Seal is Bergman at his most allegorical. And then James Kendrick of Q Network Film Desk, the most iconic of Swedish master Ingmar Bergman's canon of masterpieces, is also quite possibly one of the most powerful, memorable examples of late 50s and early 60s European art cinema, and gave it 4 out of 4, and that was in June of this year. Film Frenzy, April of this year. As a youth, Matt Brunson, as a youth, perhaps no other film opened my eyes to the wonderful possibilities of cinema as much as The Seventh Seal. And then Jeff Beck, not the musician, in April of 2023 said, Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal stands as one of the writer-director's greatest triumphs, thanks to its exploration of intriguing themes that are woven into a tapestry of fascinating and compelling characters. And then one more I want to give you, because this was the Christian Science Monitor. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, given, so heavily religious in the film. Bergman's objective in The Seventh Seal has been to achieve with the camera the simplicity and directness of a medieval muralist in recounting an immemorial mystery drama which touches the great issues of human experience. And that was August of 2022. So, those are things.
Well, also, how many people can honestly say they never questioned the existence of God?
Right. I was going to ask a question about that.
I mean,
Yeah, I have a question, if I can articulate it. Which is that he questioned the existence of God, and I wonder how many people in that era did. I would imagine if they believed in God, went in there and didn't question.
didn't question.
And the fact that what I didn't understand is that how come people in the Middle Ages would not question the existence of God if each side murdered countless people
In the
in
name
the
of God.
name of God?
Great
But
point.
apparently, nobody questioned that he was supposed to be unusual and rare, that he was kind of like an agnostic. He wanted to know God's presence. I would think, as Laurie said, that more people would question the existence of God, but of course it's the Middle Ages, so.
And if they did, they wouldn't admit it.
I think,
Yeah,
because, well, you saw what they did to the girl they thought was a witch.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
I think
yes.
it's probably risky to
Yes.
criticize the church at that point.
yeah.
Well, medieval,
In this country.
I mean, I would love to have proof that there's
Yeah.
something there. I would love to have that,
Yeah.
that proof. I would love to have proof there's something after death.
Yeah.
Which is why, I hear people that go to mediums and they have these great
Yeah.
experiences, and I say, I wish I believed that.
Yeah, me too.
I wish I believed it,
Such a
and I
nice
really
belief.
don't. And,
Yeah.
but I'd feel much better if I did believe it. So I envy the people that really do have that faith.
in
Yeah.
medieval times,
Yeah.
it was a caste system.
Mhm.
Follow, and the peasants, they didn't question.
No,
As you went up the line, you questioned, they cut your head off.
right.
So ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do or die, and that is the theme of the medieval period.
Well, and I think that was summed up by that one guy who yelled at everybody, "You're all gonna die,"
Sooner or later.
I found that the dancing part, when they were performing, was a little awkward. And
They weren't good. I mean,
And-
you saw him juggling with two balls, right?
You're calling it a juggler?
was it meant to be that way, or was this the way it was done in those days? I was
Find a
like
juggler, it'd be
embarrassed.
great.
almost
You're gonna ask.
While they
right.
were
You
doing
pull that,
their,
Comedy act.
Well, and people didn't always like it, as you saw, they got the vegetables thrown at them.
I don't blame them.
So let me ask, is there a significance of the night recognizing death, behind the
That he tricks
petition?
it. He
He
realized that
plays
trick.
chess with them, but he recognizes death all the time, his death.
He knew what that.
Is there a significance in the recognition?
That's a good question. I didn't recall seeing anything specifically addressing that. And like, I was wondering, is he the only one who sees death?
Mhm.
But it's not really true because
Squire.
Joseph saw him
The
too.
Joker.
One
The Joker
point,
saw
yeah.
death.
Yeah, he saw him
So
too.
vision, yeah, vision.
Aren't we at one point?
But he walks over to Mia and
Mm.
starts to talk to her. It's such a difference from everything else,
Mm,
Mhm.
that little scene.
yeah, because he appreciated the life they had.
Mhm.
Right.
And what really turned my stomach was the self-public flagellation.
Right.
That,
Oh,
that
Which
great.
apparently was historically accurate. A lot of people did that
Oh, yeah.
at the time of the plague. They felt it was God's way of punishing everybody, so they were punishing themselves too.
Doesn't
Kind
that
of
still go
preempts
on in
God.
different
Preempts
cultures?
They were like walking along and hitting.
That
Oh, my
is
God.
common in Spain.
Yeah,
Very-
exactly.
I'm gonna do more than to preempt God. If I punish myself,
Right.
then you're not gonna punish me by giving.
That
me
could be it,
plague.
right? That could be it, right?
Oh.
Anything to avoid the plague, because as we saw, having the plague was a pretty nasty way of dying.
And was there any commentary on what the knight did with the young woman who was the so-called witch? He gave her something that, I don't know if it anesthetized her
Give her
or poisoned
death.
her, or she.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if it, he was a little vague in how he answered, like what gave her. So I didn't know if it was to help make her feel no pain or if it was to put her to death completely. So I couldn't tell which it was, but I think it was to help her on her journey was really all it was, one way or the other, however you want to interpret it.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if a knight had something that would be able to kill himself if circumstances got so bad when you're in the Crusades. That's possible.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that, absolutely.
I think that 10 years after the Crusades, I think a lot of the Templar Knights were being hunted also. And they were being put to death because they were despised by the person who was then the Pope. And
Well, and
yeah,
they, a lot of them, I'm sure, committed a lot of, heinous crimes too.
terrible,
Yeah.
terrible stuff. So
Yeah.
they weren't beloved figures anymore. They weren't respected. So there could have been a lot of reasons why he
Mhm.
lost hope.
Right.
But that could have been one of them, that they were
Oh, yeah.
pretty much
Parallels to-
despised.
Well, and I think everything he saw going through the Crusades to survive, he obviously saw
Terrible.
hell, really.
Yeah,
Um,
so was Templar the name of the knights that fought in the crusade?
Yeah, so the symbol that he had on, the
Yeah.
cross, is the symbol of the Templar Knights.
Oh.
The Templar Knights. I happen to know this because I was in Portugal this summer, and I had an opportunity to go to a castle of Templar Knights, and that was the symbol, and he had it, and that was the symbol that they had gone to the Crusades, and they were the people who were identified as, you know, protecting Christianity. But they did, you know, they had their battles in the Holy Land, but when they came back, they were not respected. And some of
Why
them
was that,
had-
you know?
Yeah, why did they flip on these guys?
Right, because they had done a lot of atrocities.
Right.
They had killed a lot of people.
Yep.
On their way there.
Brutal.
They were much more.
Wasn't that what they were
respected.
sent for?
Yeah.
When they came back, they raped, they stole, they
On the way back?
plundered on the way, some on the way there and some on the way back. They weren't all great people.
Right.
They weren't, you know, holy figures or anything.
What else is new?
They were men volunteers.
I have a question. So I was curious about, so he chose the Crusades as a time to address his questioning of God, right? In the 50s, or when, you know, what was going on then that he said, well, I got an idea. I'm gonna write this thing about Crusades. Like, in the 50s.
Why then?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I can answer that. Because he didn't have the idea in the 50s. He had the idea in the mid-40s. So it was just after World War II, around the end of World War II, is when he first got the idea. But he didn't get the green light to make this movie because it's a little, you know, not a traditional movie, not a conventional movie, until he started getting more acclaim in Sweden. He had a little more clout, he was able to get financing, and he was able to make the movie. So I think that is a function of the timing. But it's a great question, and I think that's the answer from what I could.
Okay, well, that makes
Found.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Did he make Max von Sydow famous, or was Max famous in a way?
Von Sydow had been in Swedish TV shows and some other things, but this made him internationally known.
Okay, but
Yeah.
he was.
Yeah, he already had a career going, yep.
With Ingrid Bergman, did she once do a movie with Ingmar Bergman? Did they ever overlap?
I don't think so. Not that I recall. No, I don't think so.
That would be way too confusing.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Way too confusing. People would know which one is which, I think.
I know, I just didn't know, they were both Swedish, right?
Yeah.
All right,
It reminded me, Ed, of the
Same time.
Monty Python movie, The Meaning of Life.
okay, I'm glad, actually, it was the Holy Grail.
It's
It was the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail was inspired in part by this movie.
I knew it. I actually looked it up. I'm like,
Sure.
Monty
Remember this?
Python was inspired by this
Very
movie.
good.
Yeah.
Great minds bring out your dead.
Yes, bring out your dead, right, exactly. All right, there's
Beware
others.
the Inquisition.
I've got some funny trivia that kind of goes along with some of that. Okay, so this is from IMDb, which is a great source of trivia for known movies. Bergman credited the film with helping him overcome his crippling fear of death because the film dealt so overtly with the subject. He found it a highly cathartic experience. Now, his inspiration was said to be drawn from the period films of Akira Kurosawa, of which Bergman was a big fan. He made Seven Samurai, was the most famous, but also Rashomon and many others. He's amazing, maybe the best Japanese film director of all time. The chess pieces used in the movie were sold from Bergman's estate in 2009
Strange.
for the equivalent of about $145,000 US at the time. Bergman based the entire iconography of the movie on murals in a church where his clergyman father used to go and preach. The last 2 minutes of the film, this I thought was really interesting, are pure improvisation. The actors played the whole final scene, and when Bergman saw in the sky a cloud of unusual shape, he told the troupe to again put on the costumes and directed a new version of the final scene in one take. You know, when they were on the hill with the clouds behind them. Yep. So the 50+ films he has done, Bergman said this is one of his own rare favorites. The film's most iconic image of a knight playing chess with death was lifted from Tabe Kirka in Tabe municipality, Sweden. It was painted in the 1400s, 1480, by Albertus Pictor, and is notable for not being painted over during the Reformation. The church where Squire Johns and he arrived, Antonius Block, arrived 15 minutes into the film, is actually a model hung in the dead tree in the foreground. But that was pretty cool. It was von Sydow's first film with Bergman. Bergman began writing the screenplay while he was in Stockholm's Karolinska Hospital recovering from a stomach ailment. The script was initially rejected. He would end up rewriting it 5 times. Only after the success of Smiles of a Summer Night in 1955 in Cannes was it to be considered more seriously and was able to get it made. The script is based on a 1-act play, which he wrote in 53-54 as an exercise for the acting students at a theater. He asked the pupils to suggest roles they wanted to play. Based on those answers, he wrote a few pages of monologue. Now, interestingly, the Vatican selected this film in their values category on its list of 45 great films. Now, other people who got inspired by this movie, and this was a big surprise. Van Halen, with Sammy Hagar on their 1995 album Balance, and Scott Walker from his album Scott 4, have songs named after the seventh seal. Both were inspired by the movie. The Van Halen song also mentions the Virgin Spring, which Bergman made in 1960. The film has been lampooned frequently over the years, most notably in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Also, Woody Allen's Love and Death, interestingly, came out in the same year as Monty Python and the Holy Grail, 75. And Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And you'll all appreciate this. It's included among the 1001 films you must see before you die. So you can check this one off your bucket list.
Uh-oh, Kathy can't do that. She's gotta go watch the second half.
Oh, okay.
She
She couldn't make it. Couldn't make
I almost did
it.
it.
She couldn't make it.
After the parade where they were hitting the silence.
Oh, that was hard. The film is included on Roger Ebert's Great Movies list. It's ranked number 30, non-English speaking film in the critics poll conducted by the BBC in 2018. It's also mentioned in Bruce Coburn's song, How I Spent My Fall Vacation, with the line, quote, like that guy in The Seventh Seal watching the newly dead dance across the hills.
Well, they newly did. They're on your way.
I don't know why I thought the wife was already dead when they came in.
No, that's interesting. Well, I mean,
I don't know why I thought
so
that.
think about the wife for a second, because
What?
what did she do for 10 years?
Where were the children?
And she didn't age.
No, they didn't have children.
No, they had that baby, it was 10 years old.
No, the night.
No,
didn't
the
have a
night,
baby.
the night didn't.
The
Right.
night's
He and his wife
at the
didn't have a
end.
baby.
Max didn't have a baby.
Right.
So the plague was already in the house, you saying, or?
Well, I don't know. I mean, but she survived, even though most of everyone around them did not. So
He didn't
how
know
did
that.
she
He didn't
survive?
know- He didn't know.
No, he didn't know until he got in the house.
Not
But the
everybody
reaction
did.
when he saw her was bizarre, right? He was like standing there like, oh, like you're alive.
Yeah.
And she was a little more normal, like, oh, I can see you've aged, but
You made it through too.
you made it through. It's good to see you.
But she said, I waited for you.
Yes.
You're-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought she was dead and she was waiting to go with death until he came.
Yeah.
You're too heavy. Oh my God. You're really heavy.
Yeah. Just-
Oh.
And with who?
Yes, he went, I waited. for
Right,
you.
so they
And it
could
was
go
like,
together.
So,
Right. But they missed so much of life together.
Yeah.
They were newlyweds. They didn't know each other apparently for very long.
right.
And as he said in some conversation earlier, and then here they are getting ready to go die together.
Yeah.
So Ed, I must thank you for choosing this as an assignment. I never
Never
would
would watch.
ever have watched it if it wasn't an assignment.
No.
I would never have chosen it, but it is fascinating,
Yeah.
especially with the discussion.
Yeah, I thought it was worthy. And I didn't even get into it, but there's this psychiatrist who wrote this whole, and it's 4 pages, I couldn't, but her comment, she thought this film wasn't so much about religion as about his quest for love.
Mhm.
I didn't completely buy it, but there are moments where I see she had points.
Well, I thought at the end, the meaning of life is love.
saving
That's-
humanity.
Well,
He
that's what he-
found that out at the end.
Right.
That's what he's.
Because we saw the young
Very
couple
good
with the Jason, right,
That's what I got from it,
right.
you know.
The joy.
You know, when the father and that couple was having visions all the time. He had visions at the beginning, he had a vision at the end.
So I think that just meant that he had extra sensory perception powers that she didn't, which she kind of admired in him, but she also knew it might be dangerous if he starts telling everybody else about these visions, because they may not be true. So I think some of them were true and some of them weren't. I mean, there's one that she talked about with him earlier. She sort of chastised him like, oh, that vision you had, that he goes, well, we don't want to talk about that one, you know, because
Yeah.
it wasn't true. He made that one up and he admitted making that one up. But that also, he was kind of acknowledging that his others weren't made up, or at least a lot of them were not, and they were genuine.
Oh, he saw it. We saw the visions.
We
that
saw
he
what you saw,
He
right,
his vision,
We
yeah.
assume that,
Yeah.
we're assuming it's reality,
right,
but
right, but it may or may not be, but it was fascinating, and he was the one who saw them on the hill. I don't know that his wife did,
Yeah,
I don't think she did,
Yeah.
No.
so, but it was fascinating, but
And he said the angel of death is all around us.
yes,
Reminded me of like Passover too. You know, like they were like hiding in the wagon, letting it pass.
pass over, yeah, with a storm, and then, you know, they wake up and you hear the birds singing, and it's sunny, and somehow they're right by the water.
Yeah.
So-
that-
That was kind of bizarre, because they were in the forest when I thought everything's.
That's
Whatever.
right.
But, so I think that was metaphorical too.
Yeah.
That, you know, they're going through this turbulent time where who knows if they're gonna live or die, and they're literally out of the woods, exactly.
I like that.
So, but you know, back to the water again.
I don't think
started-
Bergman's, I don't think it was a comedy.
It's very deep.
I don't think it was.
No, actually, several critics,
Oh, no, there were some funny lines.
there was surprising humor
Yeah,
in different
yeah.
parts, like the juggling to me was hysterical.
I know.
He's
Well, the
practicing
sing-
his
the
juggling
singing.
with the two balls.
The singing, I mean, it was just hilariously bad.
And then the little affair the guy had with
Oh,
the,
God, with, what's her name, yeah.
with the Smith's wife,
Lisa.
yeah,
She was a piece of work. That was interesting.
right. That was almost a silent movie scene.
Yeah,
And the mute woman who said nothing the whole
Until the
time,
end.
except the end.
When she said, she said it is finished.
It is finished.
Knew, meaning she knew they were dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only thing she said. It is finished, right? So with that, I guess we're finished.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So much. All that prep for us, that's so lovely of you.
Yeah, it was fun.
What, yeah, that would be fun to, one of his.
Yes.
How we spend
Let's
hours
not do scenes from there.
discussing-
No.
That's not.
But I'll send out the invite, you'll get, some movies to pick from, and, okay.
But when you go to a book club and you read a book that you never would have read,
I know.
then it's a good
I just
discussion.
want to say to everyone, hi, because I'm only joined 2 weeks ago with my husband.
She's officially a
And
member.
this is my second.
I'm just gonna stop the
first
recording.
Bingo, but I like this one much better.
Well, you